What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Kick it off with Nick Underhill from neworleans.football. Neworleans.football is the site. I've been a very happy subscriber for multiple years now. You should check it out as well, neworleans.football. Nick, what's going on, man? How we feeling today?
Doing great. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty well. Okay, let's dive right into it. We had a hypothetical that we played with in hour number one. I want to see where you land on it, Nick. Let's say when the Saints pick, I don't think this will be the case, but it could be. Let's say that Dallas Turner and Brian Thomas Jr. are both available. Where would you go if you were the New Orleans Saints?
Oh, Dallas Turner, easy. No doubt about it. I mean, no disrespect, but I mean, I think that's exactly what they need. And look, I think the best possible outcome, if you could just see into the future and you knew that you could get Dallas Turner at 14, I mean, then that frees up what you're doing in free agency, and you all got to spend the big money on one of the highest positional values there. I mean, you just kind of look at where they're at those two positions too. I mean, they got Olave and Shaheed, like in A.T. Perry, like theoretically you could be fine with that group of players. But if you go into the season with Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, where he's at, and, Peyton Turner is a maybe, Tano Passanio, I think you're in serious trouble at defensive end if you don't get that other player. So if you can add the young guy to that position, I think it solves all your problems. And I think Dallas Turner is kind of exactly the type of player that they kind of need at that spot. I mean, the problem is he just ran 4.46 and jumped out of the Lucas Oil Stadium. So I mean, I don't think he's going to be there at 14. So I think that's probably something that's not going to happen. They probably have to move up if they want to try to get him. But I think that just where this team's at, the need is significantly higher at defensive end.
Okay, so Nick, if it's not Dallas Turner, is there another edge rusher that fits that mold? Because we look at some of the other players, they're a different size. Dallas Turner is in that 240, 245-pound range. He has the 4.4 speed. Like Jared Verse and Latu and other players obviously are good players, but do they fit what the Saints are looking for to get more athletic at the position?
Yeah, I like Verse. I mean, he's somebody that I think could be a solid fit there in the same mold. I mean, maybe he's potentially there. Like ESPN's last mock, I think he went like 15, and and this was pre-combine. So, I mean, this stuff always changes as people kind of catch up on different stuff. But, yeah, I mean, look, I think the interesting thing, and one of the things we've been hearing is that they kind of want to change. I wouldn't say change the prototype, but they want to get somebody that's would typically have been probably considered an exception in previous years to their prototypes, where they're a little bit smaller. And, I think that's been a huge problem for them. And one of the reasons why they haven't been able to stop some of these quarterbacks that can run now, like, I think the game changed on them a little bit, and they kind of kept sticking with, what worked against the pocket patcher, the guys that, typically didn't get out and extend plays or run. And, you're trying to keep them, you approach them a different way, but you get more athletic quarterbacks. I mean, it's just common sense. You need more athletic defensive players to chase them down, and I don't think that they went that direction. So it's something that I think they're looking to try to do. And, their prototypes, like they should be staying on point with what the league's kind of doing, because the way they set them is they just take the average of the starters around the league. So it would be the average of all the left defensive ends, and then the average of all the right defensive ends, and then they set like a minimum requirement that's a little bit lower than it. But, I think they want to lower that even a little bit more so that they can get some of these smaller, faster guys. And Foskey was supposed to fit that last year, and then he just kind of really never got on the field, was injured, and then just didn't develop quick enough really to be a impact player in year one. Maybe he can still help there, but yeah, it's definitely their point of view on what they want out of that position, I think, has changed, and it's more athleticism, maybe less priority on run defense, and just making sure they got somebody that can go out there on third down and chase down a quarterback if they need to.
Nick, let's dive into Marshon Lattimore. So ever since they redid that contract, or basically the money would potentially go with him if he was to end up on another team, the door was open for a trade, right? And the rumors appear to be gaining steam. So I want to talk about price point. At what point does a deal become attractive enough to maybe move on from Lattimore? And I think the other day we played this, what did we say, like maybe a second rounder? But then you look at what Jalen Ramsey got, and I don't even know that a second rounder is in play. Where do you, well, actually, yeah, let's start there. Where do you think kind of potential tipping point would be reached for the Saints?
Yeah, the reporting on that story kind of got really weird this week. I mean, it's like something that's been out there for a while. Like they announced it to the league when they did the contract that he was available for trade, and then it just kind of seemed like everybody caught up this week. There was one on ESPN that like it was like his salary is $1.2 million. It makes him attractive to the league. Well, yeah, I mean, like kind of, but like because it's an option bonus, it's $15 million, which I think still makes him incredibly attractive to the league because he's a great player, and $15 million is a discount for a top 5, 10 cornerback, whatever, wherever you want to rank him. Like that is a discount. But yeah, it's $15 million if he gets traded because it is the option bonus. The same thing they did with Aaron Rodgers when they traded him to the Jets. They did option bonus to kind of make sure that money traveled when they traded him, and they gave him the flexibility to work the cap, whatever. But yeah, so I mean, what does he get traded for? If it's, I think that there needs to be like a fundamental understanding of like the situation with the Saints. Like if they're trading him before the draft, then all that money hit because you can't do the June 1st deal. So like it needs to go to June 1st so that they can split up their future, the commitments that they have on their future books. Because if you trade them, it accelerates. So if they do it before June 1st, which, would be draft, that would be the time to do it so you get a pick. That compensation is going to have to be significantly higher because you're talking about a team with no cap space taking on additional cap. So that price for the Saints, like they're going to have to be convinced at that point to trade him. Like you need to make a case. Like you kind of got to take him from them at that point because they would be paying to get rid of him. And then what are you paying for? You need to be paying for a first round pick probably to make that happen. So if you want Marshon Lattimore and you want him, this season and you want to use your draft capital, I think that you have to pay a little bit more to do that. Now, after June 1st, I think it goes down a little bit because they can split it up and then it becomes a different conversation and the Saints aren't being penalized then for trading him at that point. So I think at that point, maybe it's a player for player swap or it's a third round pick, something like that. I think at that point you're willing to do it for a little bit less. But you mentioned Ramsey. I think that is a decent comp. The second time he got traded was a third round pick, right?
Yeah.
I believe. I mean, yeah. I think that's probably comparable. I do think if you watch these guys play, though, at that point when Ramsey got traded, like some of the man coverage skills had deteriorated a little bit more than I think Lattimore's, and you could see him kind of sitting on routes and trying to jump more stuff and kind of cheating a little bit. And I don't know if like people are quite honest about what, like I think Lattimore does some of that too, but not to the same extent. Like if you're really like going through and watching it, like there are times where it's like the way he played something in 2018 is different than how he's playing it now. And I think there is kind of like a little bit of that compensation for, a guy being 28 and, not having the same exact ability to just kind of roll out there and do it. Like you kind of gotta compensate for a loss of a step or whatever. Like, and I think you can see that a little bit, but it's not as pronounced as it was with Ramsey, but I think that is probably the comp. The other thing too is like there was a story about him being like the over the cap did the story and they said 5th round pick. Like if this dude gets traded for a 5th round pick, like everybody should get fired. Like that would be the dumbest thing in the world. Like you can't trade Lattimore for a 5th. And the other thing is it's not a cap situation. Like they aren't getting rid of him because it's a cap thing. Like they're trying to save money. No, there's like frustration interpersonally between player and team and player. And, that stuff can always get resolved. And there's a possibility that still happens. Like this gets all settled and there isn't a trade and everybody buys back in and they keep it going. Like that's also a possibility. And kind of, today you asked me to throw down a bet, like, and obviously like things can change. I'm not saying like one way or the other. I'm not tipping anything here. Like just based on the latest information coming back from the combine, kind of talking to everybody in the like. My bet on it right now is that there isn't a trade. Like I don't think it's etched in stone. Like I think there's a possibility of this thing getting fixed. So I think that's still on the table as well.
All right, so we're talking a lot of different positions. We're talking about Marshon Lattimore. Maybe if you did trade him, what you would get back. So I look at some of the needs of this team, and edge rusher and getting more athletic at the position, I do agree there, but it's hard for me to get past the offensive line when you were bad a year ago and you've got 2 starters who are free agents. And so what do you think, Nick, the plan is for that position group? Do you see more veteran players coming in the offensive line? Do you think that at 14, if Dallas Turner or somebody like that's not there, they have to go offensive line? How do you fix that issue?
It's such a problem, like with their limited resources, like the lack of picks and everything, and the lack of money. It's so hard to kind of see how they're going to check all their boxes, because like in those multiple ways to look at this offensive line, you can look at it and think that like, hey, like if Ruiz is a little bit better, then tightens up and Ramchak's healthy, and it's like, oh, maybe it can work out. But like I think you got to look at it through like the absolute most pessimistic lens, because. And I'm not saying anything slick about the quarterback here. Like, I just think before, like when it was Breeze, like you were able to look at stuff and say, like, yeah, like this maybe stuff will work out. Like, I think anything that's a maybe now on offense, you have to plan for the worst case scenario, because you don't have one of the 5-10 best quarterbacks to ever play the game anymore. So, like, I'm looking at it like the only sure thing is Eric McCoy, and like everything else needs to be improved and get better. And I think bang for the buck, like you can buy your guards in free agency and it's a little bit cheaper, and that's probably a better use of resources. And if you could go into the draft and it's like, no matter what happens, we got to get one of these 2 edge rushers. And if you got to package some picks to do it, like you do it. And I absolutely hate that though, because then you're a year from now. And again, it's limited resources, and how do you address everything, and limited cap. And it's just like a never ending cycle of like resource chasing. And that's how you end up talking yourself into like, well, maybe we should trade Lattimore, like, because you need more picks. And, oh, he's 28 in 2 years, like he's not going to be here. And it's just kind of like, I think that's how you end up in these situations where you're kind of like, making compromises to get, all the things you need. And I just don't know that you ever kind of get into the place that you want to be in when you're doing that. So the best way to do it for me, like if you give me the perfect world, like I'm getting my guards in free agency. Somehow I'm getting a pass rusher at 14. And then the O-line depth, I think, is, and especially offensive tackle depth, is deep enough that you might be able to nab somebody at 45 that, maybe doesn't start right away, but you can develop them and you kind of get your swing guy. And maybe you bring back Pete for, I don't know, 11, 12 million a season. I don't know what the price is for him at this point. He did play some tackle last year, and I think he was 5.5 last year. So, maybe that adds some value, but like around $10 million or something. Like I would be cool bringing Pete back as a stopgap, and waiting to see what happens with Saldivari and Penning, and maybe one of those 2 things hit positive, and you're in a little bit more of a position of strength. But like I don't know that they have the resources to go through this and address everything they need to do and be in like this absolute position of strength. And then now you're talking like they're down a safety, like and that isn't an immediate need because you got Howden there, but that's another spot you need somebody. And if you get rid of Lattimore, like, okay, now Paulson Adebo's in the last year of his contract. Are you paying him? And if not, like, now you're in a spot where you're in, you're exposed at another high value position. So it's a tough way to go, man. Like the best thing they could do here is you got to keep Lattimore. I think you got to hope that you can get your pass rusher at 14. Because, I just don't think they have the money to go out and pay somebody that makes an immediate difference, and they need somebody that makes an immediate difference.
Talking to Nick Underhill from neworleans.football right now. Go check out the site. Go sign up. It's a great way to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the New Orleans Saints. Video, articles, they got it all right there. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.